Hello there, Bernie Miklasz back with another Bernie Miklasz show here on my YouTube channel. Today, I want to take a few minutes to talk about the late, great Bob Uecker. I'm sure many of you, if not all of you, have heard that Bob Uecker's family announced earlier today, this Thursday, January 16th, that Uecker had passed away at the age of 90. Unbeknownst to most people, he had missed some time in the place other than a fishing pond or a fishing lake. The place he liked to be best was in the broadcast booth in Milwaukee doing Brewers games. But he was really sick during his final season this past year, and his family later revealed after his passing that he was dealing with small cell lung cancer. But he tried to the end, man. He tried to the end. He was in the booth a couple times when the Brewers were playing the Mets in a playoff series. That's the one where the Mets dramatically won it, a winner-take-all game with Pete Alonso hitting a bomb off Devin Williams, I believe. Pardon me if I'm wrong. But Uecker was so sick that he could barely get through it and had to withdraw from some games and had to go home early. But he was there for the final game, and I was the one that ended the series, and I wanted to pass along something that MLB.com, there's a great piece about Bob Uecker and his final journey as the Brewers broadcaster that you should read, but written by Adam McCalvey, a great baseball writer for MLB.com. But after the Brewers had eliminated the Mets, this comes from the story, as Jeff Levering, who was doing the play-by-play, and he was Uecker's side man in the booth when Uecker couldn't games or the normal schedule applied. We heard a lot from Jeff Levering doing the play-by-play. So as Levering began the post-game show, Uecker sat in his seat and looked at the field. His wife Judy, always by his side at the ballpark in recent years, walked down to Uecker's seat and put a hand on his shoulder. And on the air, Jeff Levering's voice crumbled. So, his loss just affects a lot of people. I mean, and we'll get into everything. I had the occasion to visit with him a few times. One time, the last time I spoke with him, I was doing a show on 101 ESPN, and this was soon after Red Schoendienst died, and Bob Uecker, from his time with the Cardinals, 1964 and 65, he was a member of the 64 World Series champion. You might have seen the photos of him out there with a tuba that he took from the band at the old Sportsman's Park and Pep Band. He's out in the tuba catching batting practice fly balls with the tuba. Look it up. You'll find it. I mean, it's everywhere. He got into some trouble for that, but that was Uecker. Anyway, he just, he by that time, I'm talking about the time that Red Schoendienst passed away, Uecker was never a jerk about anything, but he just really cut out a lot of side requests that he used to do in abundance. But as he got older and he was dealing with health problems, he really was really picky about what he did outside his broadcast duties and outside of making some commercials locally in Milwaukee. But my producer, who I'm thankful for, got in touch with him and just said, Mr. Uecker, I know you don't do many sports talk shows anymore, but Bernie Miklasz would like to have you on just to talk about your friend Red Schoendienst. And Uecker was happy to do it. And we spent a good 45 minutes or so on the air, and it was just a lovely experience. I mean, he just talked about Red. He told some stories. He did those self-deprecating tales of his time in St. Louis, making fun of himself. It just like, and I can't do his jokes, but just like when he hosted Saturday Night Live, that was 40 years ago. He told a story. Uecker's one of his great skills. He had many skills, was his self-deprecating humor. I don't think anybody was better at it. I mean, just absolute solid gold. So he told the story, and I can't do his voice, nor can I be funny, but he talked about on Saturday Night Live. He says, I got out of the cab and there's a statue of me outside the St. Louis ballpark. It's a little screwed up. They had me batting left-handed. I was a right-handed batter, but the uniform and everything else was the same. And right at the bottom, the guy's name, big letters, some guy named Stan the Man. I guess he made it. He did a beautiful job on it. So that's what I mean. Again, you had to be there, but it was really, really funny. He's got a million things like that. But the thing that the thing that struck me about Uecker and his kindness, I got an example of his kindness when he agreed to come on the radio and talk with me at length about red chain knees, and it was one of the best experiences I've ever had during my radio career, and I've been in radio a long, long time. God, I was thinking back on it now. How lucky was I to have to spend that time with Bob Uecker? But the thing that just is an extraordinary about this otherwise ordinary man, in terms of his humble origins and all that stuff. I mean, he was a ball player in the majors for 297 games. He was a backup catcher. He hit 200 and bounced around with a couple teams, Milwaukee Braves, and then Cardinals, and then I think Philadelphia, somewhere else. But he played fewer than 300 games. He hit 200. He was a member of that 64 Cardinals World Series winning team. As the backup catcher, played in 40 games and he batted 198. And I was looking, I said, well, I wonder if he got into the World Series, because I couldn't remember. I wasn't around then. And yeah, under a Baseball Reference, you go to his page and it has all these different stats about this and that. And then it says postseason. And I said, oh, maybe he pinch hit. And I look and it says, did not appear in the 1964 World Series. And that just made me laugh out loud, because that's classic Bob Uecker. So he got to the World Series, he didn't play. And I'm sure he had 1,000 jokes about that. I'm sitting here and I'm laughing and smiling. And, this wonderful man has left us at age 90. I think Bob Uecker would be delighted that all of his fans and admirers everywhere would be actually celebrating his life and having a good time and laughing and giggling and recounting all the absolute joy that he provided us for, I don't know how many years. I mean, he started doing Johnny Carson in 1971. The King of Late Night was the one that dubbed him Mr. Baseball. So, you go back to at least 1971. He's been entertaining American audiences and baseball audience. This is all over the place. Local Milwaukee radio, national baseball broadcast for, I believe, ABC. And you look at everything else he's done. Let me get back to that in a minute. But what I wanted to say is, so here you have a guy, no offense to backup catchers. I was a backup catcher once, but it's not it's a great job because you have a job, especially you make to the majors. But I'm saying you're not really covered with glory, right? You don't have people blaring trumpets for you and looking to give you, making you the Star Award winner at banquets, right? You're not making a lot of money on the side. Maybe you'll show up at a clothing store and sign some autographs or something for $20. I have no idea, but it's not usually a path to fame, right? Being a backup catcher. So when I think about that, dude hit 200 in his big league career, and then that was his platform. That's kind of the spot where at least his name meant something. And can you even comprehend what he was able to do with that? It's just, this is one of the most stunning careers like in the history of entertainment. I don't know that there's ever been a career like it. And you say, well, Bernie, I love him too, but you're getting a little carried away. No, I'm serious, because you know why I'm serious? Because if someone had to match his career, you say, oh, well, that person matched his career. That person also would have had to been in the major leagues for 5 or 6 years and hit 200 as a backup, unglorified backup catcher, right? So, you start from there. Now, first of all, so if we're going to compare like the most unique careers in entertainment, is first, especially in comedy, is what I'm talking about. You start there. Now, no one had that as their launching point, right? And so how do you go from that to being on, and again, I'm an old enough guy to where I saw a lot of those performances live on Johnny Carson, because I used to watch Johnny Carson pretty faithfully, the King of Late Night. So how do you go from being a backup catcher with fewer than 300 games and a 200 batting average to being sitting next to Johnny Carson more than 100 times? And every time he was on, he would crack Johnny Carson up. He would just crack them up. How do you go from his 200 batting average in the big leagues? How do you go from that to, uh, where do I even start? How do you go from that to hosting Saturday Night Live? How do you go from that to playing Harry Doyle, the beloved play-by-play man for Cleveland in the major league movies? And I don't have to tell you all the stuff. I'm not going to quote the dialogue. Just a bit outside, that thing. That's the thing. People quote him now. People that never even knew who he was, other than the guy in the movies, right? And the Miller Lite commercials. Oh, I must be down in the front row. People today still use that in their own lives when they're looking, they're at a ballpark trying to search. It's like, well, anyway, where are our seats? Let me look. And they're in the wrong place. Oh, I must be down in the front row. And how many bits of dialogue have been quoted through the many, many years since he made, especially the first major league movie, right? Here's a guy, again, I keep repeating myself, but starting as a somewhat obscure backup catcher, and he goes from that to having being a star in movies, he had his own sitcom for 6 years, Mr. Belvedere, playing George Owens, a former sports writer turned sportscaster who was married and had 3 kids and lived outside of Pittsburgh, and he was always getting into it with his butler, who was Mr. Belvedere. 117 episodes of that. It was a hit comedy. It ran from 1985 through 1990. He had, I think I said this, in case I forgot this, let me repeat myself if I did say it, and I apologize. In TV and film, he had 118 acting credits, all after age 50. 118 official acting credits. And then someone was telling me, because I never watched any of this, but he was also all over animation. Like the DC superhero Cyborg. There was an animated series, and he would do these voiceovers playing another character, and it was his voice. I saw something that was really adorable too, because I was looking at this today because someone pointed it out today. He actually provided the voice in an animated kids show called Puppy Dog Pals. He was on an episode that was called Take Me Out to the Pug Game. He's doing children's animation, right? These Saturday morning shows. Harry Doyle, George Owens, on and on and on and on. Maybe the funniest, maybe on the short list of the best Hall of Fame induction speeches ever, when he was inducted as a broadcaster. You ought to watch that sometimes. It's like 16, 17 minutes of pure comedy gold. All those old timers, all those Hall of Famers sitting up there in the back, just going nuts, laughing and, leaning over and just like grabbing their side and just bringing the whole place to a raucous laughter. What an entertainer, man. And what a national treasure Bob Uecker was. And the fact that he had that experience in St. Louis, for 2 years, and was a member of a World Series team, and made such great friends with all those Cardinals. And he always loved coming to St. Louis. He always loved talking about his time as a Cardinal. He loved telling stories about his dear friend Mike Shannon, Red Shane, Gibson, Brock, McCarver, Boyer, on and on and on and on. One of the other reasons I'm smiling today, right, even though he's passed us and he's gone to, he's going to be in the front row. He will definitely be in the front row in the next place he goes to, right? He will be in the front row. Anyway, all the pleasure that he gave us. But the thing that I think, the reason I'm smiling today, and I know you understand why I am, is that how many of us, when we sort of figure we're winding down in our lives, no matter how long our lives left, and how many of our lives that we have left. Sorry, I'm trying to put my thoughts together. And, sometimes you don't know when your time is through. A lot of times you do know, and you start to reflect. I do that now. I do. You start to reflect on a lot of things, right? And how many of us, and this doesn't mean we didn't live a rewarding life. I know I have, and I know many of you have, if not all of you have. But how many of us can say that we have squeezed everything there is that's good out of our lives in terms of you have a life, you make the best of it, you try to squeeze all the joy and all the positive things and all the wonderful experiences. You try to squeeze all of that and pack that in how many years you are on this earth. How many of us can say, well, I pretty much did everything I always dreamed of doing, period. I mean, I did everything and even more. I was a backup catcher in the big leagues who hit 200, and the stuff that happened after age 50, or even in my 40s, to imagine that this incredible life would unfold and then it would make me incredibly famous and incredibly wealthy, and also, more than anything, incredibly happy. And that I made so many others happy. It wasn't just about me. It's what I could do to uplift the moods of others. How I could help that guy down in St. Louis by talking to Red Shane and Cardinals fans listening and feeling it in the heart. I mean, he gave so many people pleasure and joy and smiles, just happiness. There's no one that I know, and I mean this sincerely, there's no one that I know that I could name off the top of my head, and I'm talking about especially in the sports vernacular, or not the vernacular, the sports forum, pardon me, who got as much out of his life, his 90 years, than Bob Uecker. And so I wish I don't have any beer in the home today. And if I did, unfortunately, on this day, I would not have Miller Lite. But if I did right now, let's pretend I am. Pretend I do have one. Here's to Bob Uecker. What a pleasure it was to know him just a little bit. And what a great, great, great delight it was to watch him over the decades. And he was one hell of an announcer, too. And he treated all of his partners in the booth, many of them young, upcoming broadcasters, he treated them like they were Hall of Famers themselves, treated people great. And wow, Milwaukee won't be the same. That sounds like a cliche, but it'll be a long time whenever Brewers fans go into that ballpark and they look up at the booth. Long time they'll be looking at that booth and thinking of Bob Uecker. Maybe there will come a time in future generations where Brewers fans won't look up when they walk in there. They won't look up and think of Bob Uecker, but it's just sort of like Jack Buck and Mike Shannon in St. Louis, or some of the all-time great broadcasters in the markets that they worked, legendary, iconic people who enhanced the baseball experience. It's the same thing for him in Milwaukee. So people for a long time will be looking up at that booth and thinking of Bob Uecker. And you know what? That's going to make him up there in the front row where he is. That's going to make him very, very happy. Thank you very much for watching. I appreciate it. And please leave your comments about Bob Uecker if you have any. Take care.